All right, ladies and gentlemen. Today's lecture is going to look at the exploration of the quote-unquote New World. The Old World, of course, being Europe. The New World being right where we are right now in the Americas. So, first, let's talk about how much we actually knew about the world at this point in history. The map on the left here is a map made by a guy named Ptolemy. It's a Greek guy, and you can kind of see how much we actually knew about the world at this point. Knew a little bit about Asia. You see the Silk Road right here running to China. And this is kind of where people thought the world ended at this point. Here's Africa, Europe, and that's all people thought there really was. This is made 1460 printed yet, give or take. Notice we have the guys blowing the wind right here, and the wind's coming different directions. Kind of weird. Anyway, over here on the right hand side, this is a map made by a guy named Amerigo Vespucci. Amerigo being what America is named after. Notice how much the map has changed. We have Asia, Red Sea, Africa, Middle East, Europe, and over here we got Florida, North America, Mexico, kind of looks like South America, a little bit Greenland up here. In that 100-year period or so, they quote unquote discover about a world, okay? But really, just kind of is a bigger discovery of what the world actually is in terms of all those kind of ideas. So, who kicks this whole thing off? It starts off with the Portuguese. Portugal being right here, a little part by Spain there. It starts with a guy named Prince Henry the Navigators. This guy right here, he actually did not know how to navigate, did not go on a boat. Honestly, not even sure if he liked water or not. He was a prince, though. He had lots and lots of money. So he's the guy who bankrolled all these different explorers and traders, all kind of stuff, to go try to get to Africa and Asia to bring back expensive things, especially gold from Africa and spices. So you kind of see the route most of these guys are taking. You take the trip down here to get gold, and eventually a guy named Vasco da Gama came all the way around here, around the Cape of Good Hope, up Africa, and across the Indian Ocean to India. Got a whole load of spices and came back here. Now he could do this because they figured out how the winds blew. They figured that during one time of the day, the winds will blow this way. During the other time of the day, winds will blow this way off the coast of Africa. And so essentially, you have these ships that are zigzagging their way down the coast here as a way to get around the Cape of Good Hope and then up here to India. They set up all kinds of ports here on the eastern coast of Africa, and eventually set up more trading posts all throughout Asia. Over here is one called Malacca in the modern day Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines area over here, and you just kind of see where all these different spice ports were for the Portuguese, going all the way up to Japan, China, Indonesia, Philippines, so on and so forth. All these little red dots indicate different places where Portuguese ships would stop. And so there's a huge spice trade going back and forth here between Asia and Europe, bringing all these good spices in to flavor food, all those kind of things. Portugal could control this trade because they had ships, they had guns, they had technology, and that allowed them to really control a lot of these areas. Spain got in the area too. Now, everyone says back then we thought the world was flat. Yeah, sure, some people did, but honestly, most people back then probably knew the world was round in some way, shape, or form. Ptolemy, the Greeks had figured all that kind of stuff out. Now, people have tried to find a better way to China, though, a better way to India, because it was just so hard going around Africa. And one guy, Christopher Columbus, or Christopher Colombo, a Genoese guy from Italy, sailed for the Spanish. Now, he was financed by Queen Isabella. She bankrolled him for his first trip across the Atlantic Ocean. And when he lands, he actually lands here, Hispaniola, around 1492, 1493. He explores Cuba, all these different areas around here. Now, did he actually find India? No. But yet he calls the people he met there Indians, hence where the term comes from, instead of being Native Americans. And that's where the term Indian comes from that way. He didn't find any spices, but what he did find was a little bit of gold. And it was enough for Columbus to bring that gold back over here to Spain that the king and queen of Spain kept bankrolling him and giving him more and more trips around back 3 more trips back to North America. Even after being arrested one time, he was given another trip back to North America. Another really famous Spanish explorer was Ferdinand Magellan. King Ferdinand financed him. He's the first guy to actually go all the way around. His ship was the first to really go all the way around the Earth. We can see his stop here. He sailed up this way, down the coast of South America, through right here what is called the uh, Strait of Magellan, named after him obviously, and across the Pacific Ocean, eventually landing here in the Spice Islands of the Philippines. Fortunately for him, Magellan was killed in the Philippines. There's kind of a woodcut of that possibly happening, they met a group they want to trade with, and he was taken hostage and killed. But eventually, his crew came back to Spain with spices. Not only getting the spices trade part of it, but also proving that you could go all the way around the world and come back that way. So it's kind of a big event at that time. Now, eventually, you have Spain and you have Portugal kind of fighting over who gets to trade where. And eventually, the church, the Pope, actually orchestrates something called the Treaty of Tordesillas. It was made by the Pope, and basically, we took a line to divide where Portugal was and where Spain was. Kind of like when you're in the car with a brother and sister, and okay, I'm gonna put a dividing line right down the middle. You're on your side, you're on my side. The Pope kind of did that so Portugal and Spain wouldn't fight. Portugal, you get this side. You get everything east of this line. Spain, you get everything west of this line. Now Portugal is like, woo, yeah, I have all the spice islands over here in China. Woot. But Spain ended up being pretty good at that too because while Columbus found very, very little gold on these islands here, other past guys after him found tons of gold and silver in Mexico and in South America. So in the end, Spain that holds the whole western portion ends up getting a huge amount of money out of this deal. Obviously, we think about the main language in Latin America being Spanish. A lot of countries here in Central America, Mexico, countries in Central America, South America speak Spanish over here. Except over here you have Brazil. They speak Portuguese. And that's why, right here you kind of see this line, Portuguese is spoken here in what's now Brazil. You have the World Cup happening there. You have the next Olympics happening in Rio de Janeiro. You'll see a lot more about that Portuguese idea coming up in the next coming years. So here we have our Spanish Empire. Focus on Spain for a minute. The Spanish Empire stretching here through Chile, Peru, Mexico, all the way around here. Okay, and really Spain was able to conquer a lot of these areas with people who were called conquistadores. A couple of the Reconquista. These are the guys who were fighting the Reconquista originally, and now they're all done fighting against the other religions in Spain. So they need a new place to go fight. That new place was the New World. And so they went to Mexico, the modern-day Mexico, Peru, Chile, to conquer this area for Spain. They brought a couple of things with them. First off, they had guns and horses and steel swords. The Native Americans in the New World had never seen those things before. They also had things called germs. They inadvertently brought germs with them. They had military organization, very, very different than Portuguese. Portuguese basically just wanted trade. All they cared about was trade, 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 trade. Spain wanted an empire. And they got an empire. And started conquering the Aztecs of Mexico. Here's a guy named Hernan Cortez right up here on the horsey. And he arrived at Teotihuacan in Mexico, the capital of the Aztec Empire, with 500 soldiers and 16 horses. In fact, the Aztecs thought he was a god because they thought he was the man of a beast and the body of a man. And so the body part of a horse and the body part of a man, kind of some kind of god-type creature, because they'd never seen a horse before. Horses did not exist in the New World before this. They met with Montezuma, the Aztec king. Originally, they had a nice peaceful agreement until tensions started rising between the two. Eventually, the Spanish took Montezuma hostage as a way to kind of get more gold, get more stuff out of the Aztecs. Well, the Aztecs fight back. You kind of see right here, Aztecs being great warriors at this time. A lot of Spaniards were killed at 500, but Spain brought something with them that they didn't even know about. They brought a disease called smallpox. It was essentially biological warfare. The Aztecs had absolutely no way to defend against these diseases. Smallpox, flu, the common cold, you name it. Their bodies had no resistance at all to these diseases, and it just wiped out entire cities full of Aztec people because of that. And so because of this disease going through, eventually the Spanish conquered the Aztecs, destroyed the city of Teotihuacan, which today, Mexico City is built on top of. And so it's kind of a unique situation there. Same thing happened with the Incas in South America. In 1530, Francisco Pizarro, this dude right here in the arm with the awesome little sword here, goes down there with 180 men, some horses, a couple cannons, and guns, and conquers an entire civilization because he took advantage of two things. One, a civil war. The Incas had a civil war going on, and Pizarro took one side, took another leader hostage, and basically kind of played each side off each other until he could take it over. But he also brought those diseases with him again, smallpox, other diseases. And the diseases just went rampant throughout the Incan Empire and took out almost all the Incas that way so the Spanish could take them over. Now, what the Spanish got out of this were some of the largest silver deposits in the world. And so all this silver and gold now is going back to Spain, making Spain a very, very rich country. And besides that, we have this idea of Columbian exchange here. This basically means that what kind of goods went back and forth between the Old World and the New World, Europe and North America. So we see the goods that go from Europe to the New World. Things like horses, that never been here before, peaches, pigs, cattle, chickens. You never saw those before in North America. Grapes, even all this kind of stuff comes here. Rice, sugar cane. Yeah, sugar comes from the Old World to the New World. But also a lot of things go back to the Old World. The Old World had never seen chocolate before, cacao, cocoa, and so that goes back to Europe. Peanuts go to Europe. Things like potatoes, which eventually most of Europe lives off of, go back to Europe. Pumpkin, squash, all tobacco. All those things go to Europe after that. The other big thing that goes from Europe to here is disease. Almost all the main big diseases, smallpox, common cold, the flu, etc., are brought from Europe over to the New World. There's actually only one disease that goes from North America to Europe that we know about, and that was syphilis. So, yeah. Anyway, um, Spain had a lot of rivals in terms of their empire. Especially the English, they actually used pirates to attack the Spanish. So here's a guy, pirate named Sir Francis Drake. He was a privateer, a pirate who would attack Spanish treasure ships and take the money for England. Pirates like this did exist, but a little different. Later on, the Dutch, the French also became really big rivals of Spain. They would fight wars over who had to trade there. Now, there's a lot of big economic benefits for Europe here too. First off, mercantilism. A country needed precious metals and goods to make stuff. They needed wood, they needed sugar, all kind of things you could not grow in Europe to make things that they wanted to make in Europe. And now you could grow those in the colonies and ship them back to Europe. And the biggest thing was balance of trade. The idea is that you wanted to export more stuff than you imported. You want to send out more goods to other countries and have them buy your stuff, and you want to bring it from other places. So countries really worked hard to get raw materials from their own colonies, bring it to their country, make stuff out of it, and send it to other countries after that. Basically, all these new goods coming from the Columbian Exchange, all these different things that are here that we didn't have before, especially tobacco and chocolate, lead to tons and tons of money for European countries. The problem is that lives are very, very, very labor intensive. You got to have labor somewhere. And that's where the idea of the slave trade comes in. Remember, slavery existed in Europe with Rome. Africa was part of war, is basically prisoners of war. And when Europe starts going to the New World, slavery becomes part of that issue. Portugal was one of the first people in the slave trade. They brought servants to Asia, back to Portugal, so on and so forth. The big thing that brought African slaves to the New World was sugar. Here's an example down here, a woodcut of a Spanish or a French, not sure which one, a sugar factory in the Caribbean. Now, sugarcane was originally from the Old World. It was from Spain, little Canary Islands, North Africa, but not much of Europe could really grow sugar. But the Caribbean islands, the climate, temperature is perfect for growing sugar. Now, to make sugar cane into sugar, you have to grind the cane up, you have to boil it. It's a hot, terrible, sticky job. And now people want to do that job. Originally, a lot of Native Americans were kind of forced into doing these jobs for European places. But as they died from disease, African slaves were brought in on ships for some Portuguese and Spanish and British traders to run the plantations, work the farms, and the factories, all those kind of things. Europe had a sweet tooth, so in a way, sugar really helped to drive those ideas in Europe at this time. Now, people wonder where a lot of slaves come from. A lot of times it comes from here, called the Gold Coast and the Slave Coast right here in Benin, all those other places, Gao in Western Africa, also down here in the Congo, different groups. In fact, the Portuguese would trade a lot of goods to different groups for prisoners of war. And so some groups in Africa would start wars with each other as a way to capture people, then to trade off for slaves and trade for their goods to be sent off as slaves. And so you kind of think where a lot of this trade happened. It happened right here in this part of Africa over here. Now, you kind of get this idea of triangular trade set up, where basically we have slave trade going to the Americas. Europeans get all the raw materials, sugar, cotton, rum, tobacco, coffee, all kind of stuff that's being grown here. It's then manufactured here into all the manufactured goods. Things like pots, pans, guns, alcohol, and horses go to Africa to be traded for slaves. Now, this spot right here is called the Middle Passage. By far the worst spot as part of the triangular trade ever happened. I mean, here's the image you can kind of see of the Middle Passages, and here's how crowded people were on these slave ships. Something like about 482 people. Sorry, this is almost over 400 people on a slave ship. You can kind of see how people are crammed in here, laying down. Middle Passage was hot. It was sticky. It was disgusting. It was just gross. People would suffocate from being crammed in so far. And this Middle Passage, there's nowhere to stop, nowhere to let people off the ship, to get air, to get a breather, to get a way to walk around a little bit. And that's when people died, from suffocating, from heat exhaustion, from lack of food. And a lot of times when people died, they're just off the ship. we'll talk more with this in class, ladies and gentlemen. Good luck to basketball players and wrestlers this weekend in their playoffs. This is due Thursday, the 6th. Thank you very much.